Proper foundational training requires 3 pillars: endurance, strength, and speed. This is sometimes missed on a lot of runners. They think it's just endurance or always doing zone 2 all the time. And I think that's where this misconception, or where zone 2 gets really overrated because of this misunderstanding. Wow, look at that. It is gonna be a magnificent run today. It's warm, truck says 32. There's a little bit of snow cover that I'm actually surprised upon. I'm headed east in the Grovant mountain range. And today we're gonna continue to dive into your questions. We're gonna talk about heart rate. We're gonna talk about the difference between threshold and VO2 max, and dive into why zone 2 is probably way overrated because it's way misunderstood. So let's go.
1, 2, 3, 4. I was born to run to. Easy, light, smooth, fast.
Okay, all ready to go, but I want to talk about this in the truck before I get running, so it's a little bit easier. A lot of the questions coming in from you guys are a lot of heart rate stuff, so I'm kind of gonna maybe blend all those questions together and do just a little bit of video that goes on tangents about heart rate to help everybody with their questions. But I thought I would start out first by talking about what my workout or my run is today. Like I mentioned, I'm headed into the Grovant Mountains, which is just east of Jackson Hole. We've got the Teton Range to the west, which is showing its beautiful head today. You can see the Grand Teton. You can see most of Mount Moran, which was one of my favorite mountains. Just spectacular today. It's gonna be a good, sun's out, it's gonna be warm. But anyways, so I'm gonna get about 10 miles in, and this is gonna be a hilly run with 2 what I would consider climbs. They're gonna be about 10 to 15 minutes in length. And my purpose of the day is to keep those climbs aerobic and under threshold, which is what we're going to talk about. So this type of run, early season, I only focus on heart rate, so I keep it aerobic for the purpose of the day. Within that, I had a great question from actually one of my personal athletes on YouTube asking the question, what is the difference between threshold and VO2 max? And the difference is, let's first start with threshold. Threshold is the point in intensity where
your body begins to...
But as we approach threshold, that lactate that's produced at all levels, the body can't keep up with. And that's where then it's produced into lactic acid, creating that leg burn.
The body can't flush the lactate as quickly as it's produced. And that's what creates the acid feel, the burn feel in your legs when you're approaching higher intensity or lactate threshold, where now your time becomes limited.
So to keep it simple, your lactate threshold is the point at which your lactate levels in your body build so high that the body can't remove it very efficiently.
So then what's VO2 max stand for? VO2 max stands for the amount of oxygen that we can consume. How efficiently can we use oxygen within our body? We breathe in. How well can we take that oxygen that we breathe in, put it into our bloodstream, and utilize that oxygen efficiently? The higher your VO2 max, the more you're able to hold on to higher levels of intensity longer. Again, great performance, okay? And this is in relationship with threshold, and why I use a 1 mile test to formulate my training zones, because it's all relationships. Everything is in relationship with each other. And that's where we can keep it simple and do field tests and not have to go to an expensive lab that usually aren't as... It's gonna be an awesome day. Nice to have the sun out. So I just realized I actually never really answered the question of what is the difference between lactate threshold and VO2 max. And the difference is the threshold is your ability to deal with lactate, and your VO2 max is your ability to utilize oxygen. I have to say, so far it's just perfect conditions. Perfect snow cover on the roads, the sun, and it's not very cold. Yesterday I did a pretty challenging strength workout on the treadmill. Did 10 by 1 minute, just above threshold speed, and therefore my legs are a little tired, which is why it's important that I keep things aerobic today. Here starts the climb. So mentioning that I did 10 by 1 minute intervals yesterday as a strength workout kind of brings me to what I want to talk about or reiterate. I talk about this a lot, that I'm in my foundational base building, and proper foundational training requires 3 pillars: endurance, strength, and speed. Yes, during foundational training, strength and speed are part of it. And I think this is sometimes missed on a lot of runners. They think it's just endurance or always doing zone 2 all the time. And I think that's where this misconception, or where zone 2 gets really overrated because of this misunderstanding. That's what I want to kind of dive into today a little bit. If you don't incorporate speed and strength running into your foundational base building, season to season, you're just going to end up plateauing, because we need to develop speed, we need to develop strength in the base building to then let that morph into strength endurance, speed endurance later in the program, later in the build, as you get closer to your competition. So when I get questions or hear runners always talk about all they do is zone 2, okay, this is very, very limiting during base building. It's very, very important, but very, very limiting for seasoned runners. Maybe if you're a beginning runner, zone 2, a lot of zone 2 is all you do to become more efficient, just getting used to running. But if you're a seasoned runner, veteran runner, running for a long time, most of the reason we do zone 2 is to allow us to get in a lot of volume during the week. If you look at elite runners, the reason they're doing zone 2 is allowing them to get 80, 100, 110 miles in per week at an easy level that actually acts as recovery, again, allowing them to get into volume. But this zone 2 is giving them the recovery to then be able to put in harder efforts 2-3 times a week. And many times when I hear from these zone 2 runners of all they're doing, they're trying to improve their cadence. They're trying to improve a lot of other things by only doing zone 2. You really have a hard time improving cadence if you don't do speed work, if you don't do neuromuscular running, if you don't do strength running. Super, super hard to improve cadence and other things by only doing zone 2. So a lot of times, runners looking to improve, the last thing they need to do is zone 2 running. They need to infuse more strength workouts, running strength workouts, and speed workouts in base building to really kickstart, catapult their development. And this is where we really have to differentiate influencer messaging with real hardcore coaching knowledge. I'm often asked why I don't do more video shorts on YouTube, especially on Instagram. Hey, they're the hot thing, but I think it does a disservice. If you're doing short videos on one subject, it doesn't bring everything into context. And I think that context is super important. Not any one workout or way is the way. It's a gathering of a lot of things put together in a program. And that's what I try to do with these long form videos, is to put things in perspective and in context so you understand how to fit it in a long-term approach. And if I'm just spitting out short clips, hey, it's just highlighting one thing. And then what that does in the influencer world, let's say it's a short on zone 2, and there's a gazillion shorts on zone 2, then it leads us to thinking, hey, zone 2 is super important and that's all we should do. Or this one little exercise is all we should do to help us improve our running. No, it's everything combined in context that helps you improve. And I'm not really interested in building an audience who's interested in short, quick videos and hacks. All right, if you look closely, you can see the Grand Teton peeking in the background there amongst the clouds. What a day. But let me bring this home for you, give you an example. Back in my triathlon days, when I first started coaching, I was a big follower of Mark Allen. He was one of the greatest triathletes ever. And his coach was Phil Maffetone. And all you zone tours out there know Phil Maffetone, the Maffetone method, right? Okay. And this is where sometimes the message gets skewed. Maffetone used zone 2 with Mark during his off season to act as a form of recovery so he could still do things during the so-called off season before he began his seasonal training program. Once he began his seasonal training program, it got very intense. That's how sometimes things get misinterpreted, misunderstood, where now, hey, zone 2 is important, so that's all we should do. You would be shocked looking at Mark Allen's training schedule during the season of how intense it is. Again, within that intense program, the zone 2 became recovery. Now hold up, you say, Eric, you've put out a lot of zone 2 videos. You write books about zone 2 and how important it is. It is important. Don't hear me wrong. Zone 2 is important, but it's not the only thing that's important. If you have a table that has 3 legs, kind of a tripod, okay? Is one of those 3 legs any more important than the other? No, they're all required to keep the table standing. All right, the sun's warming me up, overdressed a little bit, but right here's 3 miles, 1 mile warm up, 2 mile climb, zone 3 through 5, all aerobic. Felt great. Legs are tired though. Never judge tired legs. It's okay that they're tired. If I was to make today's run too hard, let's say I take those climbs into a threshold effort, which could be very easily done. Now I haven't allowed myself to recover very much, and my workout tomorrow might suffer. All right, starting the next climb. Let's also talk about the difference between today's base building run and a run similar to this, maybe the same location, but done more in a build phase. Where again, today the hills are aerobic. As I move into a build training phase closer to the meat of a season or some races, now I'm running these hills at threshold. That's the difference. Today is all about endurance. That build workout, that threshold workout, that is strength endurance. That's what comes later, after you build the foundation of endurance, speed, and strength. All right, time to stop for an advertisement, a commercial, a promo, a plug. Now you're hearing this and you're gonna keep asking questions. Plop down $10 to $15 on my book, The Cool Impossible. It's going to give you a program that does all this for you. Big bang for your buck. And remember, a lot of this channel is about supporting that content so you can continue to take it further and further. All right, I know there's going to be a question out there asking, Eric, why don't you just do your hill climbs in zone 2? Because when we're doing hills, we do utilize more muscles. Therefore, the effort's going to be a little bit harder because we're using more muscles. Therefore, zone 4 or 5 is still aerobic, accomplishing the same thing, but take into account now I'm using more muscles. This is also why I use 8 heart rate zones. It allows me as a coach to be more flexible based on the purpose of the day. I can mix and match and blend zones much easier than with only 4 or 5 zones. Just makes it more clear for the athlete and the purpose. For example, this workout today would look like do all the climbs in zone 4 or 5. This same run later in the season, based on the example earlier, the workout reads do all the climbs in zone 5, zone 6. Flexibility based on purpose. Top of the climb. Last video we talked a lot about downhills. Let's go back to, hey, we're in base building, right? Foundational building. I've got a downhill coming up, right? What goes up must go down. So now I'm really dropping my heart rate, zone 1, zone 2, and only focusing on good foot strike and form. So now I'm creating amazing eccentric strength, that landing with really good strength and run form integrity that layers on strength even though it's easy. And then I take that strength during foundation building to downhills later in the year, running them faster. Now I've conditioned my brain, my body from a neuromuscular standpoint to have really good form on downhills, and now I can run them faster, still having good form. Downhill strength is so potent, and that's how we can really train it to our advantage early season, by really focusing on run form on the downhills. Remember, how we use our feet, how we strike the ground directly affects how we utilize muscle all the way up through our body. And if you're getting lazy with your downhill running early season, or not even focused on your form because maybe it's a little too fast, now your heel striking, gravity's pulling you in a mistake, now you've got IT band trouble, now you got tight hip flexors, all that vicious cycle that we've been conditioned and brainwashed to think is normal as runners. This is my turnaround. This is Slide Lake, and I'm gonna have the headwind all the way back, so it's gonna be noisy for this crazy GoPro, but usually the way back is my time. So I'm gonna sign out here, but if you always see extra video time at the end of the video, know that that maybe is a wildlife sighting or something profound I thought about. Okay, so over and out from Slide Lake, Jackson Hole, Born to Run World. See you guys.